Welcome to Fortress of Faith with Tom Wallace, calling North America to repentance and revival.
Well, welcome back once again to the Corner of Truth and Courage. You're listening to Fortress of Faith. This is Tom Wallace. Today I want to talk to you about a topic on Islam. One of the founding principles of Islam is how Muhammad became a prophet. And this is essential. And when you look into the Islamic record of how that came about, it really raises some eyebrows about the legitimacy of his calling to become a prophet. Before I get into that, let me turn to the Bible for a moment. When people ask me, where in the Bible do you see Islam? Is there anything in the Bible that warns us about the religion of Islam? My response is, well, let's go to Galatians chapter 1. In Galatians chapter 1, we find in verse number 6, I marvel not that you are so soon removed from him that called you into grace, and that called you into another gospel, which is not another, but that there be some that would trouble you and would pervert the gospel of Christ. And then verse 8, he says, but though we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you than that which we've preached unto you, let him be accursed. So even if someone comes along claiming to be an angel from heaven, and they give you something different, something that doesn't match what was already been revealed by God through his prophets, you're going to know it's not right because it's different. That's the key. God has given us a sample. He's given us the truth. And if anyone claims to be a prophet of God, and if they diverge from what has already been delivered, you know automatically this is a false prophet. If you go back just a couple of pages in your Bible, from Galatians to 2 Corinthians, and in 2 Corinthians we have in chapter 11, verse 13, for such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it's no great thing that his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. Could there not be a clearer warning? There's going to be people out there who's going to be claiming they got a message from God. They're going to be visited by an angel, perhaps, and even you need to know the devil has the power to do this. So keep this in mind as we now look at the Islamic record. So we come to Muhammad, and how do we know about him becoming a prophet? Where is that information? Where do we find it? You'll be surprised to know you really won't find that in the Quran. I mean, there's little bits of it there. Where we get the bulk of the information and doctrines of the Prophet Muhammad is from two sources. Now, we call these things the Sunnah, but they have individual words as well. The Sunnah is more of a collective word. If you said, well, if you are from, say, Texas, you can say, I'm a Texan. That's more specific. But you could also say, I'm an American. Okay? Both those terms are accurate. American would include all of the, Americans, people from South Carolina, North Carolina, Washington, wherever, and Texans as Americans. So if I were to say Sunnah, that's a broad, larger word. But then there's two more specific identities, sources. One is called the Hadiths. Now, the Hadiths are the collections of what Muhammad said and did according to his companions. His companions passed on through oral traditions what Muhammad said and did. And about 150 years later, two major collectors went around to their families and got these so-called traditions of Muhammad and wrote them down in their books. And one was called Bukhari, and the other was Muslim, and we call them Sahih, approved. These are the more well-received sources. And there's about 5 to 6 volumes from each of these writers, Bukhari and Muslim. But the earliest writings of Muhammad's life was from the Sirah, from Ibn Ishaq. Now, Ibn Ishaq was born about almost 60 years after Muhammad. So, again, he never really talked to the real companions of Muhammad. They talked to maybe the grandchildren of Muhammad, or the children of them, of the companions. Legends are born in less time. We have a lot can be lost in what was truly done. But this is what we have. These are the official records. So when we quote from the Sirah, from Ibn Ishaq, and when we quote from Bukhari or Sahih Muslim, these are the creme de la creme sources. They're not argued in the Muslim world as being wrong. I mean, they take these almost as inspired as the Quran itself. They don't question their validity. And yet, when we look at it, we have a lot of questions to be asked, okay? So let me read from the Sirah, which is the earliest writing of anything we've got, any source of Muhammad's life. And the Sirah means the biography, meaning the biography of Muhammad. So we have on page 106 his calling when he goes into the cave of Hira, and he's seeking to find God. His wife Khadijah keeps persuading him that, he's a prophet, and it's really through her notions. Now, he's born into a pagan priestly line, so he has some religious things about him because of his heritage. His great-great-great-grandfather was Qazay, well-known pagan priest. And so he goes into this cave, and he's seeking to hear from God, and a spirit shows up. Now, the word is jinn, Jinn. Now, jinn is spirit. That could be an angel, could be a demon. And I won't read the long, lengthy text, but you can find it online on PDFs. The Sirah, Ibn Ishaq, IBN, meaning son of Ishaq, meaning Isaac, but Ishaq, Ibn Ishaq. And The Life of Muhammad is the name of the book, in the English title. Page 106, and you're going to find this whole interaction. Basically, he squeezes him and presses on him to read something. And this goes on for quite some time, and he thinks he's going to die because he's being squeezed so hard. And then finally he tells him what he wants him to read. Read in the name of the Lord who created man from the blood coagulated. Read, thy Lord is the most beneficent, who taught by the pen, that's interesting, and taught that which they knew not unto men. Then it says, so I read it. Now that's interesting, because in other accounts, he says he could not read it. In the Hadiths, we find very clearly that he's saying he cannot read it. For example, Sahih Bukhari, Book 1, Hadith 3, Volume 1, Book 1, number 3. And Aisha is the daughter of Muhammad, and she's telling the story. And she's saying that he could not read it. That was his complaint to the angel. I can't read. And everyone knows that Muhammad was unable to read or write. He is called in the Quran, in chapter 7, verse 157, the unlettered prophet. Unlettered, meaning illiterate. He could not read or write. But yet in the Sirah, he's saying he read it. So that's one part that's interesting. And another thing is that he's being revealed in the very beginning, that God is the God who reveals by pen. But in Islam, in the line of Muhammad, he doesn't reveal by pen, he reveals by oral tradition, because Muhammad was illiterate, he couldn't read or write. He's revealing his truth to a man who couldn't read or write. That's problem number one about the whole religion of Islam. Why would God, who entrusted his precious word to men, to the Jews who could read and write, and their people could read and write, to a generation of people, of Arabs, who do not have the ability to read or write. Then we get into some really other questionable stuff. Muhammad thinks, this is a demon. I'm possessed. Let me read this is just a couple lines down. I thought, woe is me, poet or possessed. Poet meaning prophet. Prophets were considered poets, that they could give prose and long, lengthy revelations. I thought, woe is me, poet or prophet, or possessed. Never shall Quraysh say this of me. He was of the Quraysh tribe. Never shall the tribe say this of me. I will go to the top of the mountain and throw myself down, that I may kill myself and gain rest. Muhammad was so filled with dread and fear, he believed he was now demon-possessed, that he was visited by a demon. And he didn't want that to be shared amongst the Quraysh, his tribe. No, I shall go up to the mountain. Now, he's in Mecca. Mecca is built on 7 mountains, literally 7 mountains. You can go to Google Earth and just spin around Mecca and see all the mountains that are there. There's something also significant about the number 7. 7 mountains. That's something that takes us to Revelation, doesn't it? Revelation chapter 13. That's another topic that we talk about. But we'll get into that at another time. So, here's the fact. How does a holy man, a prophet of God, come in contact with an angel from heaven and is convinced that it is a demon? On the next page, we figure out how he discerned it was an angel. I can't get into the details on the radio because it gets a little explicit between a man and a wife. But basically, his wife, Khadijah, says, next time he shows up, let me know. And then they start becoming intimate. And she begins taking off her clothes bit by bit. And, is he here? Yes, he's still here. Well, when they get too intimate, the spirit leaves. Is he here? No, he's gone. And then praise be Allah, it must be an angel from heaven. Because if it was a demon, he would have stayed and watched all this. But because he was an angel from God, he left, and it must be the angel Gabriel. So this is how they discern. The Prophet Muhammad discerns that it's the angel Gabriel, and he couldn't figure it out himself. It took his wife, in a very bizarre story of how they came to that discernment, to figure out, no, it's not a demon, it is an angel. And everything, now get this, everything in Islam, everything that's in the Quran, came to Muhammad by this spirit. So was Muhammad correct at first, thinking it was a demon? Well, the Bible tells us that the devil can appear as an angel of light. And he revealed to him a different gospel. He told him that Jesus was not God, Jesus did not die on the cross, and Jesus did not resurrect from the grave. Folks, if you don't have Jesus as God and him dying on the cross for the remission of sins and him resurrecting from the grave, you don't have the gospel. Folks, he was delivered a different gospel. You make the decision. What do you think? That's it for today. Join us again tomorrow at the Corner of Truth and Courage. God bless you.